right, Coach. How has fall camp been going for your team this year? What's impressed you the most about the squad's preparation?
Yeah, fall camp has gone well. Obviously, it's a little unique for us, not playing in week zero, right? So
Mm,
we're going on, wrapping up our fourth week of having the guys here on campus and getting into game week next week. So it's been unique because they've started classes this week in our last week. So the silver lining there is they kind of get the feel for an in-season schedule with all the academic demands on top of the athletics. I think what's really impressed me the most about our team has just been the consistent energy, that we've had in practice. Obviously, um, you know, they're 18 to 22-year-olds, right? So they've got other things going on in their lives. But I think that the focus and the energy that has been going on in this has been really consistent. It hasn't been something that we've had to generate, as a staff, right? It's happened pretty organically, which has been great. So I've been really pleased with that. I think it's provided a great atmosphere for our guys to learn and grow and develop in, and it's been a lot of fun.
yeah, so I mean, the bye in week one, obviously, like you said, pretty unique. Does it change anything you do in the preparation process with practices?
Yeah, a little bit for sure. I mean, the big thing for us was we were able to kind of slow down or alter the install schedule, right? We didn't have to have everything done and ready 3 weeks in for a game week. We were able to kind of space some things out a little bit, and we've also been able to spend a little bit more time on more, situational football, and some end of half, end of game situations, just some of the unique ones that pop up, special teams wise or offensively or defensively throughout the course of a football game. It may happen, one, two, or three times during your season, but typically those are pretty important moments in the game that could affect field position or the score or the outcome of the game. So I think for us, we've been able to use that time wisely, and to really kind of coach our guys up on situational football and get reps at it.
Yes, and it sounds like that's a key area of focus you've been able to have during camp. Are there any unique challenges this has presented, or just in general, anything unique and challenging about this camp?
Yeah, I mean, I think every preseason has its own set, right? I think a lot of that is usually particular to either the schedule or just the makeup of your roster and your team, right? Like we're a very young football team. We don't have a lot of seniors on this team. We're very talented. Like we have a really high ceiling, but we have a lot of 18 and 19-year-olds that are going to play significant roles, in our football program this season, and some of which haven't had one in previous seasons. So, with that presents its own sets of challenges in terms of the growth and development, and the level of experience or inexperience that you're dealing with as a coach. But it's been good because we're seeing guys grow. We're seeing guys mature kind of right in front of us.
Hmm.
But also because we are young, it has presented a higher sense of urgency, for our guys, and something that we've really kind of stayed on them about and will continue to do so. And so that's really been kind of unique to this preseason.
Yeah, and Stonehill's made that jump from D2 to D1. You've been very successful doing that. How do you integrate, I guess, that history, even just in the past couple of years with Stonehill, with the future, 18, 19-year-olds, with the future of the program?
Yeah, I think it was unique for the situation for me, right? Having been here for a long period of time prior to that transition, and then overseeing that transition for our guys. I think it still presented some stability, right? It wasn't like a new staff, new schedule, new everything, right? So I think from that standpoint, it was good to kind of know what works here, what makes Stonehill special, and how to recruit to Stonehill. And then obviously now you take kind of that model, and you kind of throw more gasoline on it to
Yeah.
get it to kind of flare up a little bit more at this level. And I think it's been good for us in terms of our growth and development to see, to have the success, or some of the limited success that we've been able to have in the first 2 years, right? I think the good thing is it's built confidence, right? But I think on the other hand, the good thing has been, we haven't really won anything yet, right? We didn't win the conference. Obviously when we're eligible, trying to go to the NCAA playoffs, and advance from there. So, I think for us, we really haven't counted anything as a moral victory. Like we kind of still keep our sights set pretty high on what our goals are, and that's to win the NEC every year. We're still eligible to do that. So, that's what we're trying to do. And obviously, we took steps to get closer to that goal from year one into year two last year, but still, fell just short of that. So I think that's where our program is at right now. That's what our goal is, and that's where everything that we do is kind of working towards that being our finish line right now.
And you mentioned recruiting a little bit. One day you're recruiting D2, the next D1. 18 and 19-year-olds, but what are the players that we should be keeping an eye out this season, either your established players or some of the newcomers you've got?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think you starting offensively. Obviously, we're very fortunate to have an experienced, play caller under center for us and our quarterback, Asher Karaha. He's a senior captain. This will be his third year starting. And he's done a great job of developing himself, but also developing as a leader, in our program and really taking ownership of his situation and of those around him, right? Kind of bringing people with him. So I'm expecting him to have a good year. I think we've got some new faces in the backfield too, which are exciting. Xavion Woodard, who was number 15 last year, will be wearing number 2 this year. He was our backup running back during most of the season last year and had some really good success in the reps that he was able to receive. So I think seeing a big jump in his production, that's something that we're really excited to see. Defensively, we've got a lot of talent in the back end. We bring some guys back up front. So notably in the back end, we have 2 juniors. Number 4, Jordan Irvine. He was a preseason All-NEC selection this year. He's a starting safety for us. He's a junior captain. He's had a terrific offseason. He played really well down the stretch at the end of the year last year, and he's really kind of continued to climb, from that standpoint on. And then number 14, Johnez Williams, is a corner for us that had a great season last year, and he's continued to do amazing things in camp. So those 2 guys in the back end. We have some new faces, at the second level at the linebacker position, and I think a lot of those guys are going to play quite a bit of football for us. Up front, I mean, we're really anchored by our nose and one of our captains, Van Friday, number 50. He really caught a bad break last year. He had a case of mono actually during
Oh,
the
wow.
season that pulled him out for some games, and we were able to get him back down the stretch. And I think it made a big difference with our defense. You saw, how successful we were against like Duquesne and obviously versus LIU. I mean, the LIU game, he has a sack, he has a safety. He was just a force. And hopefully we'll have him for the full season. And he's done a great job from a leadership and an energy standpoint. So those are definitely some faces and some names to watch for from us, guys that are great players, but also great leaders, great people, and definitely lead from the front.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Asher Karaha. Like you said, third-year player. I think 1,500 yards the past 2 years, and then, I mean, Stonehill's record against Duquesne, pretty much unmatched. Uh, he's been here 3 years. He's been part of the whole growth process. How's the team chemistry kind of evolved with him in the team just the last couple years, and this team as well in camp?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with Asher, and we've been public about this. We've shared this. Like after his first year starting, right, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, he had shoulder surgery right after the season and didn't throw a football until the following August. So he didn't do spring ball. He didn't have a full year in the weight room afterwards. He didn't have an off season, right? And so coming into last season, in August camp was really when he got under center again and kind of, started to shake the rust off a little bit. So this year has been really different for him, right? And in tune different for our program because he had a full off season. He was able to participate in all of spring ball and really build that chemistry, with the rest of the offense and his teammates and to be out there. But I do think for him personally, the off season that he had 2 years ago really kind of, allowed him to step back and look at things a little bit differently, right? Because he wasn't able to actually, physically be out there throwing the football and leading the offense during the off season. So I think that was good for him and his growth as a leader. But I think, seeing him now and seeing how that's kind of allowed the offense to grow around him and what we can do and how we can function. That's been really special to see with his offseason. He's been able to put on some good muscle and obviously continue to develop as a football player and as a leader.
And you've been part of Stonehill football longer than those 3 years. You've been part of Stonehill football as the head coach for 7 seasons now. Part of it for over a decade. How do you kind of reflect on the growth for how you've seen the program change?
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting. I think this will be my I think this is going to be my 16th season here overall. So I got here when I was 22, 23 years old. So I've been very blessed and very fortunate, obviously, to be in one place for a long period of time. That's not the norm in our profession, unfortunately. But fortunately for me, I've been able to grow as a person, as a man, as a coach. I've been able to start my own family and kind of plant my roots here. And I like to remind my wife how lucky she is that we haven't been living out of moving boxes year to year. Um, but it really has been special. I think in a lot of ways, what I try to do with our program, what I see Stonehill does for its students and student athletes, and how it helps them grow and develop. I mean, in a lot of ways, it did that for me. Getting here at the age that I got here, and I've literally kind of been through every phase of my coaching career here. I started as a position coach and became a coordinator, and then obviously became a head coach. So, seeing, knowing kind of where we've come from, like obviously I have a really great appreciation for where we're at now and the direction that we're heading. Um, but I try to make sure that the kids today, they want to live in the moment, right? They want to know, what it's like now. So for me, like I use the history as a reminder, but also as kind of like a compass, kind of pointing to the future here too, and what it can be, because we've always kind of said that about where we are. Like, this could be a sleeping giant, right? And that was back when we were a very mediocre Division II program, 15 years ago. So um, to see us develop and obviously commit to the move to Division I has been really exciting. And now to see us competing, at this level with the programs that we compete with, I think it's very reassuring to know that this was the right move for our college and for our athletic department. And I think the best is still yet to come.
College football is special. The best is still here to come. You have goals as far as wins and losses, winning the NEC championship, but it's special in part because the program is more than wins and losses. What do you emphasize to your players, both in terms of on-field performance, but in off-field as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're unique in terms of who we are and what we do here at Stonehill, because, as a football program, we still are going to recruit to our academic profile. Like, we're a very strong school academically. We always have been. We can't recruit everyone, right? There's a lot of great football players out there, but for us, we need and want guys that want the best of both. They want to be challenged academically. They want to play at a high level athletically. So, for us, we want guys that don't have to sacrifice one for the other, and that's what we seek to provide here, as a football program. You can get a great degree, play a high level of football. If you're good enough, the next level, we'll be able to look at you here a little bit easier, right? But also, you're going to have an opportunity to go pro in something other than football because of your Stonehill degree and what you'll take from this 4 year experience. So for us as a program, I think our culture is definitely in a really good place. It's something that we talk about and practice as an individual and as a team every day. We really preach our three pillars: are discipline, intellect, and grit. And we define those for our guys. Our guys can rattle those off to you, but also, like, we apply them to our player development, right? Like, obviously from the discipline standpoint, like, guys need to do what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it, right? And that's part of maturity and growing and taking self responsibility, but also being committed to what you're trying to achieve, and what you set out to do, even when it's not easy to do so, right? And then from an intellect standpoint, I mean, we talk about reasoning and reflection with our guys. We can practice it, we can put it into action, we can go back and look at where we went right and where we went wrong, and then we can kind of restart that process over with the guys. And I think that's important. I think something we've always appreciated about our guys is that they love to understand the big picture, right? Don't just tell me what gap I have to play and what my pass drop is. Tell me, like, what the other 10 guys around me are doing, right? And I think we've done a good job of coaching up that big picture, and it creates more buy-in, right? And then grit, obviously, is just their ability to overcome adversity, right? They're going to have to display a level of mental and physical toughness, and you probably can't have one without the other. And I think it's important in today's society. I mean, there's a lot of different factors that go into what they face mentally every day, and obviously from a physical standpoint. So I think for that, it's letting them know like, hey, this is going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's when, right? And knowing how to respond and being able to kind of stay committed to the cause and through that adversity is the sign of growth and maturity. And if we can get a team full of those guys, then we'll reach our goals pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. And your goal sounds like this season you are eligible for an AC championship, not quite the playoff yet. Is that the big picture goal?
Yeah, I think that's everything that we have our sights set on right now. Obviously, there's a lot of kind of sub goals that kind of go into that, but that's not to de-emphasize some of the tough out of conference opponents that we're going to be facing. And I think for us, those are statement games. Like if we can win those football games, like we're making a statement to not only to our league but to New England, college football or FCS football.
I'm joined by Ryan Vermette with the Brockton Enterprise, and we're here to talk Stonehill football. So thank you so much for joining me before the season opener.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, AJ. Excited that football's back. It's starting to get some of that fall weather, so it's an exciting time.
Yeah, getting colder over here for sure, and having that first bye week, they're not starting in August. Just kind of a little bit of a different season, but going to be a cold weather start most likely for Stonehill this year.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with the bye week, there's been a couple teams I think in the NEC that have started, but like you said, a bit of a different year. They're going to be playing pretty soon against Stony Brook here. So excited to get that first game underway.
Yeah, and just as a complete side note, I hate when they play the CAA teams just because it's flow sports. So if you're trying to watch every single one of these games and you've got to deal with flow, it's a complication. So I guess in the future, guys, more ESPN Plus games. Try taking on some of the teams that do that. Try taking on the Big South. They've got a nice contract with them.
Right. No, that's another road we can go down for sure. All these streaming services, right? So
Yeah. So Stony Brook early on, of course, on Saturday, but this is a team in Stonehill where a lot of these NEC teams, they've really had the opportunity to kind of pick and choose where they want teams to come up from Division Two. Stonehill is one of those schools, but I guess unlike what we expect from Mercyhurst this year, some other schools, Stonehill's really shown a lot of success early on the past couple of seasons. The only team to beat Duquesne both years, only team to beat Duquesne last year. So what are you seeing as far as continuity and what we should expect this year?
Yeah, well, being at their practice a couple weeks ago, I can tell you that they're definitely looking to improve upon, the second place finish where there were, a cluster of teams that finished second in the division last year. Like you said, only team to beat Duquesne, they won the championship last year. They're the only team to beat them the last couple seasons. But just from being at their practice, there was definitely a lot of energy. There was a hunger, a bit of chippiness too. Not in a bad way. Just seems like the guys were really ready to compete. And after talking to some of the players, they really have their sights set on an NEC title this year, despite losing some guys, to graduation as well as transfers. They still feel like they have a lot of talent. You mentioned continuity. I think they're ready to make another leap this season.
Yeah, and probably the best or biggest returning piece they've got is at quarterback. You got Asher Craw. You got to see him, I guess, throwing live. This time he's healthy. What were you seeing from him? What are you expecting this year?
Yeah, so I mean, after talking to Coach Eli Gardner, Asher, this is a guy who's been starting since his sophomore year. He had his first start in his second year in college. And then following that season, he had to have shoulder surgery, which really didn't give him much of an off season in terms of football workouts, really more focused on recovery and trying to, get that shoulder healthy. So last season, we didn't really get to see, his full potential. This year, he said he's ready to go, make another leap. And despite the injury, he still had pretty similar numbers to his first year. So this is a guy, that's going to be coming into the season healthy with a full season of off-season football workouts. And especially, being a veteran, with, some guys, it's a little bit young in terms of the playmakers on offense. So I think he could have a, really good breakout season this year.
Yeah, and he's obviously the biggest piece that Stonehill has coming back, um, and there's some continuity for sure, but a lot of changes. You mentioned the transfer portal. Probably the biggest one to me, at least from a drama standpoint. Noah Canty, a big tight end. He actually went over to Duquesne, so we'll still see him this year if you're watching Stonehill games, but not in the way maybe you hope to.
Yeah, and going back to kind of that hunger, that energy that those guys came into the season with, they almost feel like they have a chip on their shoulder trying to, put together a title contender, and I think that might add to the fire for them. Well, I guess we'll find out. It's going to be a very entertaining game to look forward to when they do play Duquesne this year. That's definitely one to mark on the calendar. But yeah, that might just add a little more, to their to the fire that they have going into the season.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's going to be probably, I don't think it's a probably, it's going to be definitely the most fun game just because there is absolutely no way, right, Duquesne's overlooking Stonehill. Not that you would overlook them anyway, they've been one of the better teams in the NEC, but they get them October 26th, but in Stonehill. NEC front row, that's one of their front row games, but I guess for those of us who haven't been out to Stonehill, what's the atmosphere expected to be like? What are games over there?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the Duquesne game, and when a team kind of beats you, consecutive seasons, it kind of starts to be a trend. That's definitely something like you said that you don't overlook. It's actually something that you end up kind of focusing in more on. I think these games. I think a lot of these games are going to be close. I think it's going to be a team that's probably going to be in most games that they play. Um, I think they got a game against UNH coming up in a couple weeks that could be interesting. But again, Duquesne can't overlook them. It wouldn't be a surprise if Stonehill beat them 3 times in a row, or if it's a competitive game that Duquesne ends up, finally, conquering conquering them over the last few seasons. So I think, offensively, I think the team's got a lot of talent. Defensively, I think there's a few guys that could step up into some vacant roles that were left there, by transfers and graduating seniors. So I expect a lot of entertaining games out of this team this year.
Yeah, and I guess just talking about the non-conference schedule, you brought up UNH. There are two independents in FCS, and Stonehill gets both of them. Of course, they used to be NEC members, Merrimack and Sacred Heart. They're going to get both of those games. Stony Brook in New Hampshire, or UNH, of course, a bit of a scholarship disadvantage with the NEC. And then they're going to take on Lafayette. It's one of their ESPN Plus games. They're going to have two this year. That one and the game against Wagner, which is one of the NEC on ESPN Plus games. I guess just starting with the non-conference schedule, anything you've got highlighted, anything you find to be particularly interesting?
Yeah, I mean, I think, just looking at the schedule from last year or, the past couple seasons, this is a team that played Georgetown and they beat them. Not that Georgia's or excuse me, Georgetown's a powerhouse football school by any means, but still a big name brand in terms of just colleges in general. So I think this team, they're not afraid to play anybody, whether it's Duquesne, a team that's been at the top of the NEC, or teams like UNH and Lafayette and Wagner, like you mentioned. So I think they're ready to play anybody, anytime, anywhere, and that's why I think all these games could be really close this season.
Yeah, and then I guess just jumping into conference play, obviously it's an 18 league. This year, effectively seven. Mercyhurst is not playing every team. One team they're not playing this year is Stonehill. But, 6 games on the calendar. Obviously, the Duquesne one, homecoming as well, is going to be a big one. Any of the other games you're excited to see that Stonehill take on this year? Any thing you have on your calendar?
Yeah, I think just UNH. I think, just the opening game against, Stony Brook. I think it'll be just good to, see what the identity of this team is. And I think that game specifically, just to see Asher, see what he looks like this year, coming off of a fully healthy off season, and just, kind of see what the identity of this team really is. And I think that'll kind of set the tone for the upcoming season. So that's one I got my eye on. UNH, it's a, fairly prominent FCS school. That I think that could be a great game. And then said it a couple times already, but that Duquesne game is one that I really have marked on the calendar.
So when I talked to coach, he'd really, kind of emphasize to me 18, 19-year-olds, younger team, actually limited amount of all NEC players. It's a situation where I think they've got the second best quarterback in the NEC, but Darius Parentes has a shot of Sundays, so you can't really.
Yeah.
It's no fault of Asher Karajas that he's not number one on that list. But I guess when you saw the practice, again, thinking it's a younger team, is it gelling early? Is it something where you think it's going to need some time before they can come together?
Yeah, I think it might be a mix of both, right? It's college, so every year, you're going to have new guys stepping up with, maybe some slightly different schemes that are fitted more towards certain players. It's not like this is the NFL where you have guys signed on for, 7, 8, 9 years, and they kind of build, this long chemistry together. But there are some returning players. I think, at wide receiver and running back, there's guys that are returning that were, second or third on the team in terms of yardage. So I think there's already a little bit of rapport there. But again, to be kind of one of the more dominant, offenses in the NSC, there needs to be, a step up in that chemistry. So yeah, I would say, it's a mixture of both, as it, probably is for a lot of other colleges.
Sure. And then I guess there's been some back and forth. The NEC is not covered particularly strongly on a national or even regional scale. So there's been reports both ways whether or not Stonehill is actually eligible for the NEC title. Answer is they are, however, not in the playoffs. But I guess handicapping it for me, do you see this team as having a legitimate opportunity to finish number one? Do you think they're top half, bottom half of the standings?
Yeah, you can't, rule any team out, I guess, this early, but I would say, there is definitely a chance, just, considering how well they've done after moving into the NEC. They've clearly shown that they can beat, some of the top teams, in the conference. I think losing, their top wide receiver and running back, I think that does definitely hurt. However, it's really going to be dependent on some of these younger guys that are going to be coming into more prominent roles. They contributed, a decent amount last season, but they're really going to have to kind of step into those, big roles this year. I think a lot of it is really going to depend on the offense, how Asher looks, and like we talked about with the chemistry. So I do give them, a decent outside shot at it. If not, top, quarter of the conference. I think last year going 500 at home, they need to improve upon that a little bit. Going 500 on the road, nothing to shake your head at. I think that's actually pretty solid. I think with that 2-2 record last year, though, they got to improve that if they really want a chance at the title.
Yeah, and I mean, absolutely. When the teams hit harder, a lot of NEC teams have new guys coming in, decently hit hard in conference by the transfer portal, but
Yeah.
probably especially Stonehill. With the top receiver, their tight end, their top running backs gone, losing some key defensive players to graduation. But did have one All NEC member over at defensive back. So and Coach Gardner's got this defensive background. Do you see this team as obviously having the quarterback? But I mean, should we look for a strong defense from them? Or did you see good things when you had the chance to watch them?
Yeah, when they were doing 11 on 11s when I was there, at practice, the offense had, scored a couple times, but towards the end, the defense really started to make some plays. lock them down, and they're letting them know it a little bit too, right? Which is going back to that competitive nature, which I think is great, and that's going to help the team this year. But yeah, I think there were guys that were making plays in the secondary. Gershon Safrant, he's a junior local kid. He's looking to make a big leap this year and be one of the leaders in the secondary. Yeah, so I think there is definitely potential for the defense to be kind of a force for this team this year.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jordan Irvine. I guess just kind of getting to the last couple of questions here. Obviously, we're over here at NEC Blitz, just very interested, invested in Northeast football. On the FBS level, it got kind of pulled apart a little bit. Makes the NEC pretty special. You cover a lot of football in New England and this area. So, I mean, do you think there's anything special or different about Northeast football and you've been able to see?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I think my answer has definitely changed after what Boston College did to Florida State last night. That was pretty cool to watch. I think this is obviously a narrative that at least college football in the Northeast isn't as prominent as it is in other areas of the country. But Bill O'Brien, winning his first game at Boston College last night, I think the team's going to be a lot better than people think. And Florida State, that's another topic that we can save for another day. But I think just starting with Boston College, I mean that's one of the biggest prominent teams around here, and then I think trickling down, I think a team like Stonehill. Though it's it's a smaller division, it's not FBS and they're not in the ACC like Boston College, but it's a team like we talked about that might have an outside shot at a title, and in a place where we're used to winning football championships, right? I think having some teams that could really be surprises this year, like Stonehill from a smaller point and Boston College from a bigger point. I think it's great. Hopefully this is something that Northeast football can build on over the next few years.
All right, so Ryan, Brockton Enterprise Sports, great follow on Twitter or X if you prefer. Anything else you want to talk about you're doing or involved with?
Yeah, I think that's it for the most part. Week one of football on the South Shore, which is that's my predominant coverage area. That's going to be starting this Thursday. Really excited to get that going. I think high school football is great. It's just it's a fun atmosphere to watch the kids take the field under the lights, and I'm excited to get that going. So stay tuned for all the coverage.
Yeah, keep an eye on Brockton Enterprise Sports. You're going to see a lot of players, a lot of kids there that are going to end up in our league. So really fun follow. Can't recommend it enough. And Ryan, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for having me on, AJ. I appreciate it.